Hello everybody, here we are today talking about how Calgary Flames fans haven't had things easy over the past year or so, and just getting onto that a little bit. So before we get started, please make sure to subscribe if you're new to me or hockey, whatever the case may be. That being said, let's get on into it. So every year, and if we're being honest with ourselves, every single day, NHL fans will argue amongst each other about who is dealing with the worst pain of being a fan of whatever team it is. And that's funny, but it's also something that you hear about a lot, and typically it's with the cellar dwellers, teams that are at the bottom of the league that tend to be bad, and not only that, but be bad for a while. But I'm going to be talking about the Calgary Flames and how things really haven't been easy for them over the past year or two, even though they haven't been a bad team. In fact, they have back-to-back seasons with 38 wins, so looking at that, that's not atrocious, but I do think that they have a reason to be angry and be angry with some team success. Now, it's not just, a variety of teams that they're angry that them being successful is kind of a thing. It's more specifically about two teams. The first one being the Edmonton Oilers. They are their provincial rivals that have been more successful for the entirety that they've both been around. Yes, you could say, oh, well, Calgary and Edmonton over a certain span have one championship apiece, but in reality, looking at what Edmonton did in the 80s, there's no contest. On top of that, too, the Oilers are a team that in recent years has been playoff luck and has been able to go on multiple deep runs, and they were on the verge of winning the Stanley Cup last year. I know it's got to be hard for people in Alberta that are Flames fans to see this and say, yeah, this is just a common occurrence as of late. And yes, the Oilers did fall one game short of winning the championship. Problem is, while Flames fans probably were happy about that, another team ended up winning the cup, and it was the Florida Panthers. And you're thinking, how could a team that is up in Alberta care about a team that is in southern Miami having so much success? And I think a large part of that is circled around a player named Matthew Tkachuk. So Matthew Tkachuk played with the Calgary Flames and then basically said he didn't want to sign an extension with the team, so they traded him to Florida. Now, right away, you're probably thinking, oh yeah, you're not going to like a player that might have not wanted to be with you long term, but I think it's all the success that we've seen afterwards as Matthew Tkachuk ends up going from a Flames team that won the division to a Florida team that just kind of follows up where he had been before, except they're even better. As with him, he's got 197 points over the past two regular seasons and is definitely averaging over a point per game, played about 150 games in that time, but also has been able to get 46 points in 44 games played. And if you're looking at something like that right there, you can already see a problem, right? Getting a lot of points in the postseason is a good thing, but when you realize how many games he's playing, it means that over the past 2 years, the Panthers have been able to go on a lot of deep runs, and that's not a surprise here, as they have been. They've been able to win their division most recently this year, and they are back-to-back Eastern Conference champions, as well as winning the Stanley Cup for the first time ever. So yeah, you could kind of see where things are getting a little bit painful as they're watching Matthew Tkachuk win a championship with another team less than 2 years, or about 2 years after they traded him away, and it's just frustrating for them. Also knowing too, Jonathan Huberdeau went from having like 115 points in a season to 105 points over the past 2 years combined, and that's a problem because Matthew Tkachuk is turning it up. Well, Huberdeau looks like he's going to be a long-term deal that isn't necessarily going to work out for the Flames. And on top of that too, again, Florida as a team has been much more successful than Calgary. Calgary has 0 playoff wins over the past 2 years. Florida has 29, and they've been able to win the President's Trophy even before that, which I know isn't necessarily saying a whole lot because we're looking really at the past 2 years, but I kind of want to go just a bit before this as to explain why things for Calgary have probably been so heartbreaking, and it is the 2022 playoffs where they end up getting knocked out by who else but the Edmonton Oilers, and this kind of sparked everything we've seen where the Flames have not enjoyed probably the past 3 postseasons, as you would go on to see the Flames get knocked out after winning the division in the second round against the Edmonton Oilers, and the Oilers go on to the conference final, and then it's kind of propelled to where Johnny Gaudreau won it out. So then he was going to Columbus, and then Matthew Tkachuk won it out. So really you're looking at Edmonton, and then Florida, and then Edmonton and Florida over the past 3 postseasons, kind of bringing down the vibe, and that's not fun. And if we're being honest too, it's more than just that as well. There is a guy like Sam Bennett who was traded from Calgary to Florida, and I think it could be a little bit more mixed about how people feel about Sam Bennett. But yeah, things have gone really well for him in his time with the Panthers, and he's another player for them that recently played for the Flames that got to hoist Lord Stanley. So you're seeing more guys that are leaving, they didn't want to stay, or other guys that ended up playing for you that played better with another team that just so happens to be the team where your superstar that could have had a great career with you had he stayed ends up winning a championship as well. And there's other guys that are getting shipped out, like Jacob Markstrom, where you look at him and you realize that he's getting sent to the New Jersey Devils and could very well go out there and have a lot of success for them. So I think in just the past few years, you're seeing a lot of heartbreak for the Flames fans because they're seeing their guys succeed in other environments. Some of these players didn't want to be there, and then some of the teams that they got shipped off to are having a ton of success, while their provincial rivals in their backyard are their best team or the biggest threat for them in recent years. And on top of that as well, with the Flames not making the playoffs this year or the past 2 years, you're seeing all these other Western Canadian teams go to the postseason and be a legitimate threat to go on a deep run. The Vancouver Canucks, a team they don't like, just won the division. Obviously, Edmonton has made it to the conference final, and that has been twice in the past 3 years. One time at Calgary's expense, and then this past year, of course, going to the Stanley Cup final. The Winnipeg Jets obviously had a great year as well, and I could understand absolutely how this would not really be a fun time if you're a fan of the team, knowing that next year you could possibly fall a little bit further in the standings. And also, I'd like to point out there's not been a lot of playoff success over the past 20 years, as they've just been able to get to the second round twice, and they had a string of 4 straight seasons where they ended up getting knocked out in the quarterfinals, or the first round, if that's what you want to call it now, because it used to be called the quarterfinals. So yeah, Flames fans have had some really good years, but I also think in the 2010s and the early 2020s, they kind of were known as a team that could have a really big year but wouldn't show up come playoff time. And yeah, the 2022 team was really fun, but since then things haven't really been great, and they've had to see a lot of success, but it's now been there. So I could completely understand how some fans, like San Jose fans, could be like, oh yeah, it's not been fun to be a fan for us over the past 5 years, Anaheim fans over the past 6 years. But I would also argue at the same time that Calgary fans would be justified in saying that over the past 2.5-ish years, they've kind of been towards the bottom of the league because they haven't been excited to watch the postseason, and their team has undergone a lot of roster transition, and it's not always been something where you say, oh well, our roster is better than what it was before. But there's always going to be positives, and again, I'm a guy that could go out there and watch the 2 worst teams in the league play each other and be excited about it. But for Flames fans, I think a big part of this is the fact that their roster has changed a lot in the past 2 seasons, but they are seeing some pieces that could be working out for them very well, and then some younger players, high draft picks that could be very, very influential for this team going forward. And I think if you're a Calgary fan, you're hoping that in the future, you're going to be able to eagerly watch the playoffs instead of what you've been doing as of late, which is probably anxiously watching the playoffs, thinking, is Edmonton going to go out there and win a cup for the first team since 1990? Is Florida going to go out there and win another cup or be in deep contention again? Is Jacob Markstrom going to go out there and win the Vezina and then the Devils win the cup? I think those are all kind of valid things come playoff time, where Calgary fans probably like, do we have to watch this? Yes, because we love hockey. Are we going to be thrilled about the result? Probably not. But anyway, what are your thoughts on the Calgary Flames over the past 2.5-ish years? Do they have a valid argument as to being some of the most miserable fans in that time about how things have gone for them? Not saying necessarily that they are miserable about the sport, just seeing what has transpired against them. So anyway, let me know your thoughts down below in the comments. Also, please make sure to like this video if you enjoyed it. Subscribe if you're new. Everybody stay safe. Have a great night. And go love hockey, alright. Goodbye, Brigadiers and Brigadettes. This is your captain signing off. Have a great night.